Welcome back to another installment of Trillium Talk across the Village Media Network and available wherever you get your favorite podcasts. I'm Scott Sexsmith, excited to have back with us reporter Charlie Pinkerton. Good to see you, Charlie. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Scott. Just happy to have made it here. Those convenience store liquor aisles were calling me this morning. So, made in.
All right, let's start with a celebration of sorts, not necessarily in honor of the corner stores, but it's been a year since Housing Minister Paul Calandra took over that portfolio, and it was at the height of the Greenbelt scandal. He's cleaned up what many would say has been the biggest stain on the government, and part of what he used to do just that may have been, of all things, holy water. What's this all about, Charlie?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, it's now been a year, I guess, since the thick and heat of the Greenbelt scandal. So, we've been thinking about all these meaningful anniversaries, of course, one of which is Paul Calandra, him being appointed housing minister. And so we recently set out to do a story about what the past year has been like and what his, Greenbelt scandal cleanup effort, how it's gone and everything like that. And one of the things that came across that work was something, very early on in his tenure, which was upon assuming the office of the housing minister during lots of changeover that he was doing to, sort of right the ship. We learned from, a number of sources that he apparently in some sort of, Greenbelt scandal cleansing of sins, sprinkled some staff with what was at least described as holy water. So that's what that's all about. His office, unfortunately, when we reached out to them about this, did not respond. But that is something that we learned that happened, according to a number of those around it.
All right, there's nothing wrong with a good cleansing. All kidding aside, though, Calandra has been on a tear of reversing housing policy and then unreversing some of it. He shut the door to developer lobbying. Politically, it's been largely successful. The party's back up in the polls. Housing starts, however, aren't so great, and the development industry is a bit ticked about that. And, of course, the RCMP is still doing its thing, so it's not all rainbows and lollipops.
Yeah, it's been, a rather interesting year for the Ford government and for Paul Calandra in this, sort of impossible task that he was given. You laid out quite nicely some of the ups and downs. And, in terms of what the average person will experience, probably the most important thing there is that we are still in a housing affordability crisis. Of course, the government shouldn't, I don't think, reasonably be expected to fix that in a year. But, the PCs, at least for now, have recovered from that scandal. We'll see what happens in the future. But the issue of housing and the fact that there's really not enough of it, and day by day, month by month, that seems to be getting at least not better. And so, Paul Calandra's work is still cut out for him as housing minister.
All right, let's shift to the never-ending speculation that surrounds a possible election. The premier fueling suspicion again last week, not ruling out calling one in 2025, which would be a year early. But now there's a couple of considerations that involves Jagmeet Singh and Pierre Poilievre. Let's start with the federal NDP leader and that plot twist.
Indeed. So this past week, Jagmeet Singh pulled the plug on the federal NDP's confidence and supply agreement with the Trudeau government. So in the grand scheme of things, that probably won't have a real impact right away. The NDP had agreed to support the minority Liberals at the federal level, which would prevent a early election federally. The next time that unless Trudeau on any given day decides to call an election, that could really have an impact is the next time that there is a confidence vote in the House of Commons. those are votes to do with spending. So, budgets, there's commonly fall economic statements and sort of these fall mini budgets. We're still possibly months away from one of those votes happening, from the confidence of the House failing. And so, it certainly is a new wrinkle and something, of course, that affects us here provincially. But at least for the meantime, we don't need to expect a federal election any day. We don't need to expect a provincial election any day, but each could be happening sooner rather than later because of that development.
And what's the impact, Charlie, to Doug Ford under a possible Pierre Poilievre-run government?
Yeah, so that's one of the things that that I hear and that is commonly talked about amidst the speculation of a early provincial election that the Ford government is worried about. Essentially, if Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives are elected federally, it's expected that they're not going to be spending as much as the federal Liberals. One piece of the Ford government's agenda over their term really has been providing a lot of funding and attracting a lot of auto investment. So that's like one area where the Trudeau Liberals have been a very good partner to the Ford government. And it's really unclear what something like that would look like under a Pierre Poilievre government if they're going to stop these, corporate handouts. So overall, there's expected to be more austerity under a Pierre Poilievre government, and the provinces, for better and for worse, are very dependent on lots of federal funding. And if you're the Ford government and you're looking to head into an election year and you're going to be proposing a budget, it'd be nice to have more of that budget supported by the higher level of government rather than having to take on the heat of having to cut or having a larger deficit, things like that.
All right. And finally, Charlie, what role, if any, does an RCMP investigation play in all of this speculation?
Yeah, well, what you going to do when they come for you? So that's something that I think the Ford government doesn't want to be seen as a piece of why they might call an election early, but I think it's, impossible to ignore. The quicker that they can have an election while they're at the high poll standing that they are at, like we've talked about, before there are any, unflattering RCMP uncoverings, if there are any, the better it is for them. So, it's, I'd say, more quietly talked about amongst folks that I chat with in conservative circles, that is something that would be influential to them jumping the gun and calling an election under a majority, which doesn't happen a lot, early. So we'll see. We'll see if they make that decision and if they try to outrun whatever it is that the RCMP may or may not have cooking.
All right, good stuff. For the most up-to-the-minute coverage of Ontario politics anywhere, log on and become a Trillium Insider today at thetrillium.ca. Reporter Charlie Pinkerton, great to have you with us. Charlie, thanks for this.
Anytime, Scott. Thanks.